Yep, we're live. We're ready to go whenever you go, Tim.
Hello and welcome, everyone. We are live after the final siren of a long weekend. And for some coaches out there, man, it was an eternity. I was one of those coaches. There was carnage everywhere. The delete team button may have been looked at several times by, myself as well as many other coaches out there. But I'm the coach that pretty much got everything wrong this week. And you can find me on socials at Tim Guest AU. And for those listening on the pod, it's Sunday, the 28th of April. Next time, come join us live on YouTube and X. Now, thanks to all who have already sent in their questions, and make sure those of you listening live comment on those platforms to name a player you want discussed or a question you want to ask. And if we don't cover it during the pod, we'll get to it before we wrap up. Now, joining me as always is my co-host, and a man who's getting around all right at the moment, Bails DT. Tell me, mate, after a massive weekend of footy, how'd you survive the carnage? How'd you go with all that carnage?
I think I went. Well, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I think I went a bit better than a lot of other coaches, which was obviously unfortunate for a lot of people. But I sort of copped it a lot last year, so I'm sort of going, okay, hope maybe this is the year that I'm not going to cop it. But what's the bet? I'll probably cop something this week. But no, going pretty well. Still copped bullets. I certainly didn't get off scot-free. Certainly a few rookie bullets and a few premiums not putting up good enough scores. But yeah, in terms of other coaches, I think I got off pretty lightly.
All right, man. Well, I'm a bit envious. I got to be honest. Yeah. Mate, all right. Well, let's move on. Let's. I'm curious to hear, the players, your +3 and -3, but I want to introduce our guest first of all. Look, this is a legend we've had on the pod plenty of times. He's been on he's on our pre-lockout chat just on Friday. It's Liam from the Free Kick AFLW podcast. Mate, how did you go? How was the carnage for you? Did you get absolutely slayed like I did, or are you feeling a bit up and about like Bales?
Yeah, look, I'm up at the North Pole because I also got absolutely slayed. It was an awful weekend, but I'm very happy to be here to help dissect, and hopefully I can talk myself around to some team improvement trades, not team delete option that, I also looked at over the weekend. And I'm sure you're going to hear about just the myriad of bullets that got copped and players that I don't own who scored excellently.
Mate, well, tonight might be a little bit more therapy than advice, but we'll see how we go. We've got an expert with us. We've got a coach that is, I'm going to give it away, he's inside the top 1,000. So why don't we start by going around our scores and ranks. Bales, let's start with a positive note. Share with us, I should say, how you went for the week and where you're now ranking.
Yeah, so in terms of round rank, so I got 2,088 as a score. Round rank was 8,076, which normally doesn't sound like too great, but I think a lot of, as we said before, a lot of bullets around. Ended up moving just inside the top 1,000, 995. I was fingers crossed at the end that there was no late adjustments, and there was not, which is good. I actually moved up 2 spots, which was nice. 995. So that put me up. What was that about? Just under 500 spots, which is great. But yeah, top 1,000 and hopefully onwards and upwards from here, because haven't dropped rank so far in a week yet, and I'm not planning on doing that this week if I can help it. So hopefully top 500, top 100, and because we'll talk about it when we get the Content Creators Cup. But DC is the 100th ranked coach, so DC, hopefully I'll see you soon in the top 100. Yes,
he's the pass score for this week. All right, Liam, let's head to you, mate. How did you score and how did you rank for this week?
Look, I had an 1891, which I think has my round rank at in the 59,000th for the round. I am not like Bales. Well, I've been like Bales in that I had improved every week for the first 5 rounds of the season. I dropped back 1.5K spots last week, and I dropped back an extra 5K spots this week.
So brutal.
Copped it was just an absolutely brutal week. Everything that I could have happened. Your VC has an injury at 3/4 time. Your C has a rolled ankle at just after 3/4 time, and then sits forward for 11. Like I I just didn't have a whole lot go right this week.
Yeah. All right. Well, mate, I'm kind of down where you are. Certainly not where Bails is. I had a 1974, which round rank was 39,000, and dropped me about just shy of 2,000 spots from. I was just inside the it was like 2.8 or something like that. I'm now 4.7. So yeah, pretty brutal. I'm gonna kick us off with our +3 and -3. Oh Jesus, maybe I shouldn't have kicked it off. Here's one thing I did do, but I mean, look, I was so focused on Fisher being a bloody sub, and looking at loopholing and all that kind of stuff. I accidentally left my C on Harry Sheasel, who went a 125, which I'm pretty happy with. So he was actually my highest scorer. Who would have believed that he would have been my highest scorer for the week? So I'll give him my +3. And my -3 has got to be, I'm going to give it to Hugo Garcia, only because I was, trumpeting to every bloody coach on the pre-lockout chat about how you should go Hugo Garcia over Darcy Wilson on Friday afternoon. And that kicked me in the guts for a good old bloody 51 points. So maybe I'm the -3, but I will give it to Hugo. So I'm sure someone else will give it to Tom Power, but he's looking pretty juicy for a -3 there as well. Bails, mate, why don't you give us your plus and -3?
+3. Ooh, I'll get. There's 3 players here, but I'll give it to Big Max again. Maxi Gorn, 134. Just
all right, moving on. -3.
Sorry, Tib. Yeah, I know it is bad if you're a non-owner, but as an owner, he's definitely been one of the picks this season. Probably shaped sort of a lot of people if they either succeeded or are not going too well. So sorry, Tim. But yeah, Gorney, because if I didn't go him, my captain would have been Bont, who was safe to say very frustrating. And I'm tempted to give him my -3 because of him after quarter time, only 56 points from a guy that was was the most expensive midfielder. But I'm not going to give it to him. I'm going to give it to Tom Powell, 34. But more to Clarko, because Tom Powell's had a pretty good year, had a breakout year in the midfield, playing really good footy. And then Clarko goes, okay, firstly, let's put Fisher sub. That's a shit decision already straight away. But then he goes, let's put Tom Powell, who's been one of our better midfielders of the season, let's put him up at half forward and not play with any CBAs at all in the first half. Let's put Josh Simpkin in, who has been moved out specifically to give those younger guys a bit more of a go. And let's put Will Phillips, who offers absolutely nothing whatsoever. And I don't think he's up to the level at AFL and shouldn't be in the team. And he gets all the CBAs. So yeah, -3 for Powell. We'll speak about him obviously a bit when we get to that game. But a few coaches are going to be wanting to trade him out this week. That's for sure.
All right, Liam, what about you, mate? +3, -3.
+3, there's some pretty slim pickings, but it's actually coming from the same game, and that's Colby McKercher. And it's probably also +3 for the only bit of rookie roulette that I actually managed to nail this week. Had him looped for 109, looked back to his, round 1 and round 2 best, absolutely feasting in the back line. Him and Sheasel were about the only blokes on the park that could touch it, and I was very happy to watch it. -3, look, Bales, you went hard on Clarko. I'm actually going to go hard on Tom Powell because he had the CBA role in the fourth quarter. Do you know how many points he put up? 4. That is piss poor. That is unacceptable. If you are going to try hard enough to actually stick around in the team, you need to do more than have 1 tackle in the fourth quarter when you're playing in the centre bounces. And it's not even like it was North couldn't win the ball. Wardlaw had more than 20 points and LDU also had more than 20 points in that fourth quarter. So I actually think it's necessary to double down on Tom Powell. And Brodie Grundy can consider himself absolutely the luckiest man alive for hitting a +15 inside the last 40 seconds to take himself up to 72, because that was otherwise a completely checked out performance. He's extremely lucky to avoid any stronger, more scathing criticism, because that was an horrendous performance.
All right. Well, yeah, plenty of hate going to be out there for Tom Powell this week. I think, like you said, it's not just the coach's choice. I think he was pretty poor as well. But look, before we get stuck talking into games, let's do a quick update on the Content Creators Cup. So just a quick one, the AFL Fantasy Content Creators Cup, proudly brought to you by Infinite Wealth. Make smarter financial decisions, where winning coaches will get $5,000 for their favourite charity. And just a reminder, there's something special for every coach available too. Head across to infinitewealth.com.au/AFL Fantasy to claim your free gift that's valued at almost $3,000. A bunch of tools and resources to help you make smarter financial decisions. If you have a mortgage, I will show you how to pay it off up to 3 times faster. If you're paying too much tax, I can teach you how to save thousands each year. And if you're someone who's committed to being financially free, then I can show you how I bought 13 properties by the age of 27. That's infinitewealth.com.au/AFL Fantasy. Look, the only thing I thought I would start doing now, just so we get through the Content Creators Cup pretty quickly, is just kind of update you in terms of the top 8 for each of the overall and for the ladders. So, look, we've currently got Mitch, Bails and Mini Monk, both 6-1, and then DC, Jeppa and Holmesy all at 5-2. And then Luke sitting pretty there in 7th alongside Warn Dogs at 4-3. So that rounds out the top 8. In the overall ladder, we got four coaches inside the top 1,000 with DC ranked 100 and Mitch ranked at 143. Notable mentions there. Then we've got Rids, Luke and Warn Dog all inside the top 2,000 there. And then from there, we've also got we've got a bunch of coaches from there inside the top 5,000. Mini Monk slid to just inside the top 6,000. That's a big slide this week. Point with that, I would think. But yeah, that's the Content Creators Cup. So here we go. Here we go, Bales. What do you want to talk about? What do you want to brag about who you beat?
No, you said, we got 4 coaches inside the top 1,000, and then you said you were like DC ranked 100, Mitch 143rd, and Rids as well. And no mention.
No. I never mentioned Rids. I didn't mention Roy, and I didn't mention you, Bales, because you guys are at like 400 and 995. I thought DC and Mitch at 100 and 143 were worthwhile mentioning. They're right up there, right in the top.
Roy, not Rids. Yeah, that was.
Yes. Little sensitive, our Bales. Little sensitive. All right. Birthday Bales this week, not my Bales the beater. Anyway, let's get stuck into the games. All right, first game. Richmond defeated by Melbourne by 43 points at the MCG in the Anzac Day Eve special. Jacob Hopper injured his hamstring there, so just be mindful of the impact of that. McIntosh replaced Jacob Hopper in the third quarter, and Laurie replaced Caleb Windsor in the final quarter. Let's Bales run us through some of the relevant scores there.
Yeah, so Tim's favourite player, Matt Scorn, went 134. He was obviously huge, as we spoke about before. Shy Bolton, 85, was solid enough there if you jumped on him. Blake Cowell's got an 80. A lot of people had him on the bench and were able to loop him on the Wednesday nights. That was very, very handy from him. Tajwal Woden, downgrade option of 69. I think we've got a couple of options that present themselves later in the round, which we'll speak about, but he is an option nonetheless as a defender forward. Clayton Oliver, 65, dropped a ton of cash yet again, so he's probably going to be 700K before we even look at bringing him in. We've got to see something first. He looked good in the first quarter, just missed tackles, a few fumbles later in the game, just didn't quite put up the score, but he's now down at 741 with a 137 break even, so he's going to be a guy that we're going to bring in at some point, just a matter of when, I think. But a few players I want to talk about. So Liam Baker, 83, looks solid again. The score probably wasn't quite there for him, but I don't think Richmond really scored too many fantasy points in this game. But with Hopper out now for obviously a bit long with another hamstring injury, is there a little bit more, I guess, trust in maybe jumping on a Liam Baker now, the fact that Hopper's out again?
Yeah, I'm definitely interested by Baker because he scores 37 points in the last quarter versus only 2 in the third. Now, Hopper gets injured in that third quarter, and I did see a bit more scoring from Liam Baker. So I think priced where he's at, I think he's still going to be priced reasonably enough. And given that a lot of teams lost Fisher as an option over the weekend and with people probably looking to upgrade Powell, I think I probably... Yeah, he'd be in my top 3 kind of forward options for upgrades this week.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a pretty solid option, and definitely one you can look at. Tim, Chris Petrarca, 74. Poor score. Got tagged by Marlon Pitt. That's now back-to-back weeks for him being tagged. But he's down now, I think, about 837K or something. He's quite cheap now, and they do have a pretty solid run coming up, the Ds. And I guess people are probably looking for a midfielder premium that's has got round 14 by if you don't have a Merritt or a Walsh. So is Petrarca any interest to you, or do you think this tagging thing might actually be a bit of a trend that we might see moving forward with Oliver still sort of working back to sort of full match fitness?
Look, along with Ollie on my watch list, not someone I'm really kind of looking to jump on just yet. I mean, obviously, pretty tasty price. But I'm just overall, I'm just concerned with the way Melbourne look. Like, I mean, they just haven't looked good the last couple of weeks. I'm not sure they've really got it all put together in that midfield yet. So, look, on the watch list and just we'll see how he goes.
Yeah. And sorry, 847K Petrarca is, but still has a break even of 137, so still going to drop a bit in salary. Beautiful. Well, that's all it from that game. So we'll move on to Anzac Day.
Yeah, the most boring result in football was a draw. So, yeah, draw at the MCG. A couple of things to mention out of this. Harry Jones busted up his nose in the fourth quarter. He was replaced by Nick Hind. And then Harvey Harrison replaced Mitchell in the fourth quarter as well.
Yep, beautiful. So not too many fantasy players, again, relevant in this game, but still a few. So Zach Merritt, 123, was just great once again. So if got West Coast this week, if you've got the cash there, he could be a solid option if you didn't have him there. Nick Martin, 113, just was very, very solid throughout the day. Big last quarter, actually moved forward in last quarter. I think that had a bit to do with the Jones injury, Hind coming on playing in defence, which meant that he pushed forward for that quarter. And I think Nick Martin even said post-game that was just a bit of a switch at three-quarter time they made. So I wouldn't be too worried about that, at least for now. Nick Dacos, 98, was solid, had a quiet first quarter. But 98, I think you take that. You're still a great target if you don't have him. But Darcy Parish, Liam, as Esther man, 107, had limited game time. So I think it was like 68% still, but looked good and I think looked better in this game. So is he an option to bring in, or do you think you'd want to see that time on ground maybe take a bit more of an uptick into the 70s or mid-70s before you look at him?
Yeah, I think the game time is actually probably emblematic of something that a lot of other people noticed, particularly with Jai Caldwell, which is the low time on ground due to high rotations for the Bombers midfield. So there it sits up at 84%, which you'd expect from your captain. But then you look at Parish at 68, you've got Caldwell down at 72, and then Hobbs was at 52% time on ground. And there were just large patches in that second half where each one of them spent time off the ground. So I do think that this reeks of a classic Darcy Parish game, which is medal on the line, put up an extra performance. I still am very curious to see how all these players fit in once Setterfield comes back, because Setterfield ultimately is the one that will just probably replace the midfield time, a lot of the midfield time that we saw from Jake Stringer on the weekend. And so I'm not entirely sure how they're all going to stack up. So it's a good performance from Darcy Parish. And that's more of what I was expecting this year prior to his injury, where it sounded like he'd had an incredible preseason. But I'm probably not that hot on bringing him in this week, just because we know that things are going to get flicked around soon.
Yeah, so maybe one that we reassess in a couple of weeks with Setterfield there. But 812K, pretty cheap to someone to keep an eye, because with a good run for Merritt means a good run for Darcy Parish. And Jai Caldwell as well, Tim, got a 71. Is there, if for the coach that brought him in, I guess forwards is not really much concern, but for people targeting him, is that maybe a bit of a turn off with Setterfield back and a lower score, and he did sit forward a little bit in this game as well?
Yeah, not many CBAs there. You know, I mean, I guess right now you'd be happier with him sitting in your forward line rather than maybe a rookie, especially after what happened on the weekend. But I think you'd be pretty disappointed with that trade-in.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd be taking him now. There's a few other options there that we could consider. Beautiful. Move on to the other Anzac Day game, the night game.
Yeah, GWS defeated Brisbane by 54 points at Manuka Oval. Looked like Archie hurt his hamstring there. Brett Daniels was unused as the sub for GWS. James Tunstall replaced Archie at halftime.
Yeah, very rarely you see a sub unused, but I think he was more just a break glass in case of emergency. But a few of the scores here. Lockie Whitfield, 105, just again getting the job done yet again. Josh Dunkley, 100. It's fine if you still have him, or if you brought him in, sorry. 100, you take that from a premium. Harvey Thomas, Tim, I know you were one lucky coach who got to loop that 77 on the Thursday night. So that was very nice from him there. Darcy Jones with a 70. Obviously, we'll speak about him in a second as well. Lockie Neal, 62, along with Zorko with 62 as well. Poor performances from both. Like Neal just has not looked up to it at all. And Zorko, just his first poor game of the year. If you did have him, I wouldn't worry too much. And then Cadman, 32 as well, could be a guy that you might downgrade to a rookie. But Tom Green, Liam, 127, bounced back with a good game after a couple of sort of down weeks. Got 100 last week, but good to see him finally put up a 110 plus score. Does that round 12 bye make it tricky for you if you maybe owned a Goulden, or if you owned a few of these round 12 guys like a Shees or a Whitfield or guys like that? Or do you think that Tom Green's at a price now, I think he's like 940 odd, that you could launch into bringing him in?
Absolutely. You'd be considering launching into him. I think that what we saw from Tom Powell probably points to something that you probably could have kept in your back of your mind anyway, which was there's a lot of players that we do have who round 12 buys, but if push comes to shove, how certain are we that they were going to be top 6 or top 8 in their line? I think Errol Goulden definitely is one of those types of players, as is Isaac Heaney. But I think particularly if you've not got an Errol Goulden, I think Tom Green, now's the time to really bring him in and launch into that. I just wanted to counter one thing you said. I'd be absolutely petrified of Dane Zorko. I don't think it was a bad game from him. That role was horrendous. That man sat at half forward for a lot of the game and then had one good quarter when he switched back to halfback, and then basically went missing in the second half. I think everyone in the back, like a lot of people that were hesitant to bring him in, and even those that did, knew that the possibility that Dane Zorko was going to shift in role was pretty likely. It would be something, you'd probably want to be hearing things during the week, but I don't think he's a target as a result of seeing that performance.
Yeah, agreed. And it was McKenna's first game as well since round 1. So that was obviously a bit of a reason why that happened. But yeah, he's too expensive, too old, a bit old. You wouldn't be targeting him. So yeah, I fully agree with that. Darcy, who we will touch on when we get to the Port game, which is the next game, because we'll talk about another person that could make cash. But Tim, we will move on to that game.
Did you want to talk about Darcy Jones?
No, yeah, we're doing that, but we'll do that with a ruckman from Port, who we'll touch on in a second.
Okay. All right. Sorry, picking up what you're putting down now. All right, let's talk about the Port Adelaide game. Defeated St Kilda by 10 points at Adelaide Oval. Aaliyah went off concussion at halftime and was replaced by Jackson Mead. And then Powell Pepper did his ACL, and then Connor Rozee with have we actually heard any updates about how long he's out or anything like that yet, Bars?
It's a low-grade hamstring. I think Rosie said he's hopeful, but even low-grade hamstrings are still like a couple of weeks. Like he'll miss. I would be shocked if he played Thursday night. I can't imagine he does. I think he misses at least 1 week. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then Angus Hasty came on as the sub and replaced Cooper Sharman at 3/4 time for St Kilda.
Yeah, and I think all of us Hugo Garcia owners were breathing a sigh of relief, but didn't actually turn out to be much more in the last quarter from him in terms of his score. He came off like 4 times. But yeah, so a few scores here. Ollie Wines, 113. Thanks, mate. Thanks for doing that when we all had you at the start of the season. But good score for him if you still had him. Jack Sinclair, 108. Could be an underpriced defender option that you look at. Looked good in this game. Went into a bit more of a midfield role as well. Zach Butters, 98, sort of just did what he had to. Didn't go big. I think it was Rosie was actually going big before he went off. So Butters, still a good target if you don't have him. Good buy as well. Nasai Wanganeen Miller, Gavin, 96, solid score from him in a tough matchup. Darcy Wilson, 92, 2 good matchups to come as well. I think he's a pretty safe option now to put it F6 for the next couple of weeks. Connor Rozee, 89. Be interesting to see if he does miss. I think he will, and if coaches do hold him because it is a week. Just quickly, Liam and Tim. I'll go Liam first. If you had Rozee, would you? If he misses 1 week and you get knowledge that it's a week,
Rozee. If I have Rozee,
yes. If you have Rozee,
as in, I do. He was my VC. It hurt a lot.
Okay. Well, there you go. Well, as a Rozee owner, what are you doing? What are you doing with him this week?
Look, it really does come down to what we officially hear and get some, actual reporting on what the grade of that hamstring injury is. Obviously, I'm hesitant to trade out of someone that, particularly if it is a hamstring, it can be 1 week, and it's someone that I picked to be a 108 to 110 scorer. But I'm also wary of that high break even now, and 1 becoming 2, becoming 3, as we've seen with some soft tissue leg injuries in the past. So he's a tentative hold for the time being. What's really frustrating is that for all us owners, plays Thursday night, so don't have the capacity to have a look at what a loopable score would be if you were to hold, which increases the degree of risk. And so it's definitely one I'm not 100% set in stone there, but just given his ceiling potential, I'm leaning, 60-40 towards holding.
Yep. Yeah, cool. A few players here, though. So Riley Bonner, Tim, scored an 80, pretty solid. Is he, with a couple of good matchups, his break-even is 89, so he's up there, and I guess people have got bigger issues. But if he didn't, are you still happy to trade him, or do you think with North Melbourne and Hawthorn to come in the next 2, you'd be happy to hold for 2 weeks?
Yeah, look, it was always a bit of a plan to kind of just bite the bullet and get through the Port Adelaide matchup, thinking that he might have had a bit of a rough score. Look, 80, I'm actually pretty happy with as a score. And like I said, we've now got the North and the Hawthorn matchup, so I'm pretty happy to hold him. And I imagine that there'll be a bunch of teams that will have a bunch of bullets out of the weekend, so he's probably just going to be sitting pretty safe in most people's teams.
Yeah, agreed. The only flag I would put out with Bonner, and I'm hoping not because he's not in my trade plans, is that it looks as though, Webster will be back this week from suspension. And you've also got like a Mason Wood, a Ben Patton, Max King, Liam Henry's still a couple of weeks away. Hunter Clark will probably play VFL, but a few of those guys coming in, it would not shock me if Bonner was, for some reason, dropped for Jimmy Webster, and then they sort of go back to what they were doing. So if he was out, then it would obviously be a trade, but the hope is that he's not forced trade. Jack Steele, 72. Liam, your thoughts? He was had that knee completely strapped up. It was giving me PTSD from last year owning him. So is there any? I guess we're not trading. He's got again North and Hawthorn, but is there cause for concern moving forward?
To be honest, I would almost say that there's a greater degree of concern for Jack Steele than for Connor Rosie, because I think we've seen this happen before. An injured but suffering on Jack Steele, particularly in games that are of lower importance, like, for example, against a pretty insipid North Melbourne team or a Hawthorn that are pretty stoppage anemic. I am worried that he'll just chuck it into second gear and just roll out of the game, not really having to go through much. He strikes me as someone who would push through and get a 75 again next week, and then he's lost all of the cash that he's generated, and you really are at a disadvantage. So I see him as a very big risk, and I want to hear more from St Kilda about that injury, and I'm very frustrated that we hadn't heard anything to now.
Yeah, exactly. We heard something on like this Wednesday or whatever about training that he said he was okay, but then we obviously saw on the weekend he did not look like the Steele that started off the year. And then the big one, obviously, from this game, Jordan Sweet, 96 points. Soldo is going to be out, I think, for another 4 weeks or so. So a good amount of time to make some cash. So, Liam, I think the question probably for a lot of coaches is going to be, is he going Jordan Sweet or Darcy Jones? And I guess it's obviously down to if you can get the same upgrade. If you can't get it, I think you're probably going the cheaper guy. But if you can get the same upgrade, is Jordan Sweet the priority with probably the more cash gen upside?
He is, but you've obviously got to recognise that the cash difference is pretty marked here. It's 200K. So if you can afford to bring in Jordan Sweet, then absolutely by all means go ahead. But that's a lot of points that you're leaving on the bench. I think that if you are a Rowan Marshall holder, who's the other injured player from this game, who had a pretty underpass score by his standards, I think he's definitely an option you could try and run on your ground, particularly if I think there's a world where if you've got Jordan Sweet, you run him for 5 weeks, and that's on the hope then that Soldo has a week back in the Sandful, Then they go into their round 13 bye and you can upgrade from there. It's obviously a very risky play, but I think that given the sheer number of injuries that popped up just from this game alone, but then across the rest of the weekend, Jordan Sweet's an intriguing option for a lot of people who are looking for a way to generate cash, for someone who now, and he looked good in the Collingwood game as well, and looked to be a pretty decent tap ruck and scored, I think, was it 60 points?
Yeah, 50-odd% game time, yeah.
Yeah, in really low tog. So, yeah, he's a fascinating option. He's very high on my watch list. And if I'm looking to try and generate cash or trying to find some way to bring some extra cash on to take a rookie up or to fix up some injured players, Jordan Sweet's a real interesting way to unlock that.
Yeah, and he plays Thursday night as well, so you can have a look at him. And if he goes well, you can always bench a Sherry, or if you've got Grundy, you can move Grundy on and play Sweet on field for the week or something. Tim, just your quick thoughts as well before we move on to the next game, just because Sweet's a pretty popular target. Your thoughts on Sweet as an option?
No, I think I agree with Liam. It's all going to depend about your upgrade this week. If you can afford to get to him, I know I can, and still bring in someone like a Goulden or a Bont or a Tom Green, then I think you'd be a fool not to. I think he's going to make a stack of cash over the next couple of weeks. And then look, there's even a play with Grundy or owners that don't have the kind of Cherry Gawn combo that maybe you could even run him on field. I'm certainly even thinking that he might, get another rookie off field in another part of my ground. So I think there's consideration for that as well.
Yeah, good points there. Beautiful. Move on to the next game on the Saturday.
Yeah, North defeated by Adelaide by 57 points at Blundstone Arena. Luke Pedler hurt his shoulder. Now, Zach Fisher came, as we all know, with the sub there, was replaced Will Phillips in the third quarter. Jesus, what are we in World War II or something? We've got a plane coming by. And then Ned McHenry replaced Luke Pedler at quarter time when he went off.
Yeah, so a few scores from this game. So Harry Sheezer, 125, was obviously amazing again. Went to more of a midfield role, forward role in the sort of second half of that game, but still got the ball regardless. So he was still very good and got the Saints this week. I think he's gonna have another big game there. Jordan Dawson, 122, very, very happy. Back-to-back really good weeks. And if it wasn't for him being rested for the final 15 minutes, which from a AFL and team point of view was the correct decision for the Crows, but for fantasy teams it was not, because that would have been potentially 140 plus. But very happy with the 122. Roy Laird bounced back to a bit of form, 121, played more midfield, could be an underpriced person you look at. I'd probably want to see another week personally. LDU, 98, Saligo, 97 was solid if you jumped on him. Chiston Sherry, 83, Crouch, 82, were both solid enough as well. And then Hardman got a 54, and Zach Fisher was obviously the sub that came on and scored a 34. Who would have thought he'd score the same amount as Tom Powell in only a quarter footy. Koi McKercher, though, so I know, Liam, you are an owner, but Tim, for someone that's not an owner, I don't think you could. But is there a way you could bring Koi McKercher back into your team for those people that maybe jumped off?
No.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, because a few people were going to be asking that and saying if you bring him back. But yeah, I agree. It's a great score, but yeah, we jumped off him and it's just one that we just miss. And if you've still got him, you're holding. And if you don't have him, I think you look at other options. Tom Powell, though, 34. So we talked about him before, Liam. Had a bad role. It looked to me as well that his confidence almost looked a bit shot, sort of maybe being pre-game, maybe got told he wasn't playing midfield today with Phillips, and it's sort of like he didn't look like he wanted to go in and get the ball. There was apparently people saying that when he could have gone the CBA, apparently he would sort of tell the other player to go in the CBA and go forward. So I don't know, maybe it's a bit of a Jack McRae, maybe the head tilt at half forward and sort of spit the dummy maybe a little bit, but didn't look great. If Phillips is not named, would you be holding Tom Powell? And if Phillips is named, would you be trading?
So I would be. So here's the thing. Like, I would be surprised if the same team and the same team structure that played Adelaide on the weekend rocks up and plays St Kilda next week. Because if anything we've seen from Clarko this year, the game plan is not static, the rotations are not static, and it changes game to game until he sees some stuff that he likes. I also agree that I don't think that Will Phillips looked amazing, but I'm also hesitant to put any of this down to a confidence problem. I think I sometimes find the head tilt stuff from Jack McRae a bit outrageous. And in all likelihood, it was Paul Curtis wasn't listening and didn't realise he was meant to go be in at the CBAs. It was very clearly his role to have for most of the middle portion of that game. And I think it's, again, one where we're going to have to watch the information coming from Clarko this week, because I would be surprised if there are not more and more questions coming from the media about, well, what are you going to do to try and win games? And I would find it hard to justify, if I'm coach, moving out a player that you finally see show the potential that they had as when they got drafted inside the top 15 picks or whatever it was, to then put him in a role where he touches the ball 10 times. So it's, again, a watch and wait for more information this week. And it's not just a bit of like hopium for me, because he's not my number one trade out priority. I've got 14 other blokes with injuries, but it's one where, I'm sure it's going to be a very popular question, a popular thought this week. We're really going to have to hope that, Clarko gets quizzed and we find some more information about what's going on there, because something just seemed off.
Yeah, no, agreed. I do think Will Phillips will be dropped. He was subbed out tactically. He might be the sub, but I'd say, he might make way. But I think I'm holding power for another week at least. I think there's probably other things you can do as well. If you're in a luxury position, you've got no issues, then, hey, he's got a 118 break even. You can jump off and go to Liam Baker, or if you don't have a Flanders or something like that. But or if McRae, if you didn't jump on him. But I think I'd be holding just for another week. I think he will be better. So, beautiful. We'll move on to the next game, which was a cracking game. Yeah,
Geelong defeated and remain undefeated. Carlton by 13 points. The MCG, there was a late change for the Razio Fantasia being replaced in the side by Jackson Binns, the debutant, who eventually came on and replaced Matthew Owies at three-quarter time. And then, of course, Paddy Dangerfield hurt his hamstring and was replaced by Tom Atkins in the third quarter also.
Yeah, which means Jai Clark might be the sub again next week.
Come on, back into the game.
Matt Kennedy, 102. If anyone did sort of jump on him as a pod option, he was very good again. Chera is due back this week, so that's a bit of a flag there. But, hey, with a forward line lacking options, he could actually not end up being a bad option. But I'll probably wait to see what happens when Chera's back. Walsh, 102 as well. Solid again, no marks. And you got the tackles there. But 102 from 30-plus touches is a bit alarming in terms of ceiling. But, hey, I'd still think if you've got him, you're definitely not trading him out. He's definitely not an issue. He's going okay. Max Holmes, 96. If anyone out there's got him as a bit of a pod option, he was pretty solid once again. Zach Williams got a 60. I think we've got him. He's a good option to loop on the bench because he plays Friday night, and a lot of people got a Zach Reed or a Nick Caulfield. They play later in the round. But David King did say that he thinks that Zach Williams should be dropped. So whether Carlton listens to him or not will be something to watch for. But let's hope that he doesn't get dropped. But Brian Myers, though, Liam, are we sleeping too much on Messi? Are we sleeping too much on him? He's going very solid. And,
This is one where I had it in one of my preseason teams, because I did like what I'd seen from him the back end of last year. Are we sleeping on him at this stage? No, he doesn't present value. He's a pure upgrade target. Now, if you're in the position where you've got a lot of cash or you've got a really easy downgrade upgrade, maybe you want to take Tom Powell up to Brian Myers. I can't talk you off that necessarily. He's been remarkably consistent this year, and he was already fit when he rocked up at Geelong, and apparently he's now the second fittest bloke there outside of Mark Blitzarves, who's a former, international level athlete. So I can't hate anyone that's trying to bring him in. I think that given his price, it's pretty difficult to do, because he does sit above a lot of other options who, present more value. But I can't hate it.
Yeah, agreed. Ollie Dempsey also got a 50 as well. I think it is time for him to go as well, and could be traded out. But beautiful. Well, for time's sake, we'll move on to the next game, which is Freo and Dogs, Tim.
Yeah, Freo defeated Western Bulldogs by 24 points at Optus Stadium. So Libba was once again a late out and was replaced in the side by Caleb Daniel. Draper hurt his hamstring and was replaced by Cooper Simpson at quarter time. And then Cody Waitman dislocated that elbow of his again and was replaced by the small potato in the second quarter.
Yeah, that did not look like a good injury. The key thing as well was Bevo actually said in the post-game presser that the only change was Riley Garcia coming in to the actual 22 because it sounded like he was going to be the sub. So anyone that was worried about McRae being sub, like myself, it sounded like he was going to be playing anyway. So that was obviously good to hear. But you got Tim English, 141. He's back-to-back weeks, really looking very good. He had the majority of the CBAs as well. So anyone that was probably worried about that, I was one of them. I think he is a pretty good target, especially if you've got a Grundy. That could be something you look at. Bailey Dale, 134. If you did jump on him after his 160, you were rewarded with another big score. Nat Five for 118. I know Luke from the Ball Boys has still got him. A few people got him as well. We're pretty happy with that 118 there. Sarong at 107 was solid. Hayden Young got 100, which was good to bounce back after sitting the whole last quarter with that hamstring issue. The Bont, very, very frustrating. As I mentioned before, only 56 points after quarter time. I thought, 40 point at quarter time was going to be good, but no, it didn't turn out to be as good. Jordan Cut, 93, continuing on his 90. And Questy reminds me very much of the Michael Hibbert at Essendon days, just consistent 90s. He was very good again. Jack McRae at 90. If you don't have him, he's still a pretty decent target, I think. Andrew Brayshaw, 87. Ryan, 86. And Treloar, 83. But Luke Jackson, Tim, 61. Is he a guy that you would be jumping off of and making a priority?
Yep, look, he dropped 40K last week, back-to-back 61s, up against Richmond next week. Nank can be pretty hard. Well, what am I saying, Nank? He's necessarily going to be up. Well, then again, Richmond, forwards. But look, I think he's going to be dropping enough money next week that he will be under 700K. So I think you want to get off him if you can, depending on how your team looks after all the bullets.
Yep, agreed. And Jeremy Sharp, Liam, I know he has got the ties to the MCGs in a good matchup, but if he's a rookie that gets you up to an option you want, are you happy to be trading him this week?
Yeah, I think so. And it does definitely show the downside of wingers and kind of the natural variance that comes with that. I actually probably think he's, him and Dempsey are both equally capable of putting up a 90 in their next games. I feel like I spent most of this weekend watching rookie wingers on the other side of the ground. So Closey, Dempsey, and Sharp. But I think the thing with Sharp is, and if you're trying to look for a glimmer of hope, if you're holding, for example, no winger in that game from either team scored well at all. And that's because it was a game completely dominated by hand passes through the middle. Sarong, 27, 525, Brayshaw, 20, Treloar, 19, Bontempelli, 16, Riley Garcia, 12, Walters, 12, and Ed Richards, 11.
Yeah, a lot of
the ball did not make it out to the wing. The highest score from a wing, I think, was in the 40s, and it might have been Gallagher. Like, the ball did not spend any time up there. It was just pinging up and down the middle the entire time. And we've seen Richmond are more than capable of giving up points in transition and aren't, particularly adept at stopping teams who like to chip it around or use the width of the ground. So all hope is not lost if you're looking or hoping that there might be a score to restart his cash generation. But if he's your best launching point, then by all means, go ahead.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, we'll move on to Sunday, Tim.
Well, as we turn our attention to the Sunday games, just a reminder, if you're joining us live on X or YouTube, let us know your questions by commenting on those platforms. We'll cover them off before we wrap up. Now, Gold Coast defeated West Coast by 37 points at People's First Stadium. So a bit of an injury to Closey there with his shoulder. So, Bails, do you know what the outcome of that was? Do you hear any of the after-match kind of comments?
I didn't hear the after-match comments, but I didn't hear the after-match comments. But he copped a bit of a shoulder knock. He went back with a flight to take a mark. And I think it was Matt Rowell or someone hit him. He went off, went down the rooms, got checked out, but he came back on and played out the game.
All right.
He should be okay. Bit of a few pain tablets throughout the week, and he should be good to go next week, I'd imagine, unless something else comes out.
All right, and subs, Swallow replaced Humphrey in the fourth quarter, and Sheed replaced Chesser in the third quarter for the Eagles.
Yep, Dom Sheed, friend of the show.
Right.
Sam Flanders, 112, was dominating and probably could have been a bigger score, but sort of didn't get involved amongst it in the last quarter. But hey, 112, you're definitely happy with that. Noah Anderson, 111, was very solid as well. A lot of handballs for him today, but still 111, you take that. Toot Miller, 109 as well, got it done. Liam Duggan, who is I don't mind him as a bit of a pod defender option. I know probably when not many of us are looking at defenders with the amount of option we got, but Duggan at 103 was solid again. Yo scored 82. Few people worried about him. I wouldn't be. Gold Coast won the toughest matchup for midfielders, especially inside mid. So And he was pretty solid throughout the day anyway, so I wouldn't be worrying too much. Closey with the 59 as well, as Liam said before, was on the opposite wing pretty much the whole day and also copped that shoulder knock, so I'm not too worried with him. And Jack Lukosius with the 54 was a poor score if you had him as a bit of a pod in your forward line. Will Graham, though, Liam, scored 83, looked very good. A lot of tackles there as well that helped his score. With teams trading out the likes of a Jeremy Sharp and Ollie Dempsey and a Riley Sanders for people that haven't jumped off him yet, is Graham a guy that you can safely put on field at like an M8 or a D6 at this point?
Can you do it safely? I don't think you can do it safely, but I think we've now seen that he is capable of putting up a fieldable score. Now, just having a look at his upcoming run, I think that the matchups against Brisbane and Geelong, both probably going to be good matchups for a Will Graham. Particularly that, interestingly enough, that Brisbane matchup up at the Gabba, he's shown himself to be a very tackle-reliant player. I do think that's a fieldable score. Yeah,
and I think Brisbane been giving up a few points as well. Haven't been as restrictive as what they normally are. And if you look at the CBAs as well for Gold Coast, it was he still got a solid amount, still got 13. He's never going to go past the other three. The other three of Anderson, Miller, and Rowell are always going to dominate, but he was the next guy there. And Flanders had 3, but it was a very, very tight midfield mix, so he's definitely the fourth guy in there.
Two things I just wanted to mention from Gold Coast, and one of them relates to Will Graham. I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of Jake Rogers in the midfield, because this kid is legit.
He looked good.
He looked incredible. 4 goal assists, and for a team that is dying for blokes that can hit targets, he is elite going inside 50. And that brings me on to my other point. I will be shocked if Dimmer doesn't make some changes. Even coming out of that win, he was furious in the box with some of the decisions that were being made, particularly going inside 50. Listening to Champion Data talk on the radio, they are the worst team at moving the ball from their D50 inside their forward 50 for shots on goal. And they are being hampered, funnily enough, by Jack Lukosius, who is one of the worst kicks in the AFL this year.
Wow.
On their kick rating. So as much as he can kick it long, he makes some terrible choices. Mac Andrew does more of the same. And, Ben Ainsworth had some shockers today. I saw some Sam Flanders. Sam Flanders also just pumping it way too long inside 50. And Dimmer absolutely furious, like cutting away after some dumb kick inside 50. So just a warning for anyone that, holds a bunch of Gold Coast players or is looking trading one in. I would expect some changes soon, if not in the next week.
Yeah.
Just one more question, mate. Coming back to Will Graham and Closey. Next week, with the Brisbane matchup, would you be fielding a Graham over a Closey?
That is a good question. I haven't actually checked the DVP for wings when it comes
weather as
to
well. Weather probably
playing against. I think. I think that if the weather is bad, I'm fielding Graham. If there's any kind of slipperiness, we saw what happened when Brisbane played Melbourne. They had that ridiculous number of ruck stoppages. That's the kind of game where Graham will thrive. And I'd expect to see the same if it's wet up in Brisbane. If it's a little bit warmer, bit drier, then it's probably Closey. But I think they'll probably be pretty close this week, if I had to guess.
Yeah, that game's on next Sunday night as well. So it could be a bit dewy, but we'll have to see. Beautiful. Tim, move on to the final game.
Hawthorn defeated Sydney by 76 points at the MCG. So late changes here. Max Ramsden replaced Mitch Lewis, who had some knee soreness in the side. And then during the game, Max Ramsden then came on for Jai Sarong at halftime, and Braden Campbell replaced Justin McInerney in the final term.
Beautiful. Errol Goulden was great. Was everywhere today with a 120. He's definitely a target if you're looking for a midfield premium. Isaac Heaney got a 90. The first call was good, and then after that was solid, but he did get the Finn McGuinness tag. So if anyone did see why he scored under 100, it was because of that. I actually didn't think it was Finn McGuinness. It was he didn't really get many free channels
running through the middle of the ground because it was just a whole bevy of Hawthorn players running alongside him. So at points it was Will Day, other points it was John Newcomb. It was whomever was in the midfield at the time was running alongside Heaney, and then he also rolled his ankle at just after the first stoppage in the fourth quarter. Kind of kicked a goal a couple of minutes later, then sat forward for 5 to 10 minutes, didn't touch it, and then sat off for the last 9 or 10 minutes. So he was on track for a 105, 110. But yeah, just didn't put together a big score in part because of that injury, but also he was not getting the cheap ball. It was all Errol's today. He had the ball on a string in the first quarter as well.
Yeah, and that was the other point I was going to raise. But yeah, Heaney was rested a bit in that last quarter as well. Matt Roberts, 82, got there late as well, but still definitely taking it. He's, again, a low priority for a lot of us. He's ticking along cash gen very nicely. James Jordan, 71. If you did hold on to him, he probably wasn't the worst hold now looking at the forward options that we have. He just loves a 60 and a 70. So solid enough from him. And Adam's got a 63 there. Not a great score from him. Dylan Moore, though, 114, Liam, with the lack of forward options, is he a guy that you're interested in?
Absolutely. Like we know that he's got more than 90 points within his average. And yet again, he's shown himself to be a reliable, top echelon player for Hawthorn when the rest of the team is really struggling, whether it be playing a couple of CBAs or moving higher up the ground. Price where he's at, he's at low 700s. Let me just double check what his price is. He is at 707, probably the cheapest of the true upgrade targets in the forward line. If you're looking at a McRae, if you're looking at a Baker, a Bolton, he's the cheapest that I say that you could feel somewhat comfortable with.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, no, definitely someone that we could consider. And Tim as well, Brody Grundy, obviously you are an owner of him. 72 is frustrating. As Liam said, if it wasn't for that finish, he would have been a lot worse. But is Grundy to English something that you're potentially looking at? Or as you said, is maybe even going a Grundy down to a Jordan Sweet and playing him on field? Is that something that you might look at as well?
Yeah, look, I think they're both an option. I do think English is really the way to go. I mean, priced at $943, he's now $128,000 down on his starting price, and he's averaged 134 in his last 2 games. I think, really that's the move to make if you can. I think Sweet's an option if you can't get to English.
Yep. Yeah, cool. Beautiful. I think that wraps up the games, Tim.
All right. Well, we better turn our attention to some questions. I'm actually going to kick us off with a couple of questions. And I'm sure this might even make up the kind of bevy of questions coming through. But I think there's kind of 2 really important price points we got sitting at the moment, sort of around that 900 mark, with those kind of primos that are now dropped in price a little bit. We talked a little bit about Neril Goulden. We've got what's he? I think he's 942. I think we've got a Bontempelli that's a 920. I think we've got a Tom Green that's a 942 as well. Jordan Dawson, what's he, 960, right? So I wanted to throw it out to you boys and anyone else that you can think of as well. Who, maybe would you rank your top 3 trading targets?
Well, let me go first.
I'll have to ponder quickly on that one.
Okay. Yeah, cool. I can quickly go then. So in terms of the midfielders I'd be looking at, again, as you said, Tim, there's a few options that you can consider around this price. I think my number one target, if you don't have him, is actually going to be a guy that's probably got a bit of a high break even than us, and it's Caleb Sarong. The reason I like him the most is that round 13 bye. I think that if Rosie wasn't injured, I was actually going to be bringing Rosie in this week, and I would have had him over him. But with Rosie now injured and maybe a little bit risky to bring in the short term, and when he comes back, I think Sarong is the guy with that goodbye. Richmond this week, you get that instant sugar hit that I know Stato and everyone loves talking about. So he'd be my number one. I think number 2 would be one of a Goulden or a Tom Green. So I think it's almost take your pick. I I think Green's probably got the higher floor, which doesn't make too much sense because I know that in the actual season, Green's popped a couple of low ones. But I just think Green is, I saw on the weekend, I saw a bit of a bounce back to big form. And Errol is a good option as well. I think he's, obviously, I jumped on him a couple of weeks ago and I've been happy there. And I think at number 3, I do like Jordan Dawson. I think he came out in the media in the week and said that this midfield role is going to stay. And he was great on the weekend. If it wasn't for him being rested, he would have gone 140. So, yeah, I'd be saying Dawson at 3.
Awesome. Liam?
Yeah, I think I've got Tom Green at 1. I think we all kind of feel as though he's got the potential to be the highest scorer in the game and can put together some real 140s. Then I think I agree that Sarong is a real target with that upcoming bye. I think that he can really put it together. I think I've like Goulden is obviously up there high as well. And then I think the other one I'd add is Butters. I think particularly if Rosie is out for any period of time or a bit underdone, Butters is someone who really does feast particularly when Rosie's off the ground already, when he's on the bench. So I feel as though he's got maybe 5 extra points of upside on his average if Rosie's out for maybe 2 weeks. And even then he's got a great buy and will really free up your buy structure.
Yeah, the only one I'd add as well is if you don't have him, and Nick Dacos as well being the cheapest one out of all of them, I think you can play him in your mids for the time being. So he's another one if you needed to save a bit of cash. He's another one I don't mind as well.
All right, great. And then the next question that I want to ask you guys is, look, Jack Macrae was one of the most talked about and most traded in players of last week. One of the biggest concerns a lot of coaches, including myself, had was how he was going to go with Libba back in the side. And, of course, we didn't see that because Libba didn't come back. For coaches that didn't bring him in, let's kind of discuss how Jack Macrae played on the weekend. And, once again, should coaches still be concerned and waiting to see what happens when Libba comes back? Or is it all aboard the Macrae train?
I'm not all aboard the Macrae train just yet. I think the fact that we didn't see him play with Libba is kind of hangs over all of this discussion. I think that what we did see was some very patchy, inconsistent scoring throughout the game. There were patches of 20 points in a few minutes and then 15 minutes with almost no scoring. And I also think that we definitely saw, a game that really moved the ball up and down the ground consistently the entire time, which maximised to the greatest extent the chances that Macrae had to get involved in +6s. And even then it was still pretty patchy. So I think 90s is, if you're an owner, that's probably what you want given what you paid for him. If you bring him in this week, you probably want 92, 93. I am hesitant to say that that's locked in. I do have some concerns about his ability to hit that consistently.
Yeah, I'm all aboard the Macrae train. I think he'd be my number 1 forward target if you've already got like a Flanders and guys like that at the top. I think when you look at the CBAs, Ed Richards was number 1. I think Libba just comes in and takes those CBAs. I think Macrae's role is pretty set in stone. He's the guy that comes on and rests a Bond, rested a Libba, rested Treloar. So I think that in a forward line with a lack of options, I think at what is he now? He's priced at 730K. I think, and we don't have many forwards there. They've got that round 15 buy as well, and that's probably got to start coming. We're thinking a little bit. So for me, I jumped on Macrae last week and I was pretty comfortable. I know, Tim, you were a little bit cautious with him. And I know Libba came back in, will probably shake it up a bit, but I think that he just replaces Ed Richards' role. And I think Macrae is going to just do what Macrae's done the last couple of weeks. Maybe not the 129s, but I think 9 is probably what we can expect from him.
All right, Bails. So let's move on to some other questions and then let's wrap it up.
Yeah, so the one question I had as well, just a few people might have this if they didn't have a Grundy. Is it too early, Liam, to go a Tristan Cherry to, again, talking luxury here, Tristan Cherry to a Tim English? Because Tim English, I think, it's more about Tim English than Cherry, because he's at a point where he's quite cheap. He's going to start going up in price. He's looked really good. Could you make that move if you had the luxury?
You could make that move if you had the luxury, but I think you would want to ask yourself what changed on the weekend that allowed Tim English to score better? Because I still genuinely believe that having the Lob and Darcy in the side probably caps to an extent English's ceiling. And that's, whether or not that might be capping his true potential ceiling, which is 130 plus, which we saw him do for stretches last year. That might be eminently possible. But I think if you are trading him, I'd want to be confident that I knew what might have changed or what we saw different from the first few rounds, where he's probably looked a little bit more passive and he's not had as many opportunities to take 7 marks and lay 6 tackles, which was what we saw him do on Saturday night.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I do like it, but yeah, it is agreed. I think it's team dependent, and I think it's too tall a forward line, I think, for the Dogs. Jim's got this question. Tim, who do I go get rid of first out of Williams and Dempsey?
Where's Zach Williams break even after the weekend? Let me have a quick look.
Still at 75. Yeah.
Look, if they're on field,
And you can loop Williams as well over Dempsey. You can't loop Dempsey, I don't think, for a lot of teams.
Okay, well then, yeah, probably. And look, I mean, you tend to get rid of the rookie first, right? And I think also Dempsey's probably his break-even sitting a little bit higher than maybe what he's able to achieve.
Yeah,
interestingly enough, I've seen better we've seen better ceiling scores from Dempsey, and he's got eminently reachable break even. He's at 62. He's at 76, which he's already hit 3 times this year.
He's also probably less likely to be the sub as well.
Yeah, that's my other concern, is that Zach Williams gets knocked around a lot. And having owned him way back when he first joined Carlton, he's particularly his Achilles. I think that every time that he cops a knock, there's an additional risk of an injury that might see him miss some time. He was already a test going into the week. I think that I'm probably flicking out Williams because of the sheer volume of options we have in the midfield to use him as a launching point as our upgrade. Whereas in the forward line, you really are probably much more limited into who you could take Dempsey to.
Yeah, no, a good point. I like that one. Yeah, I think if Williams is on field for you, he could go first. But if he's on your bench, I don't mind looping. But I think this is probably one where, as we can hear Mini Monk and that saying, team dependent potentially could be this one here. Well, this is the question of the week. Josh got this question. Liam, most important rookie to bring in, Jordan Sweet or Darcy Jones and 210K in the bank?
Yeah, this one, with 210K in the bank, it's too team dependent to give a really strong answer either way. Because if you're someone that needs to unlock that 210K because, you've got a bunch of fallen premiums you need to upgrade, you've got a bunch of injuries, then it's hard to justify locking that up completely. If Jordan Sweet's on your field, then by all means, I think you can launch into it. Otherwise, I think Darcy Jones is probably the better play. But he also comes with some risk because he was an injury replacement for Toby Green. Now, he looked amazing, but if you also look at the players still to come back from injury for GWS over the next few weeks, Brent Daniels was sub, but it sounds like he's got a bit of an injury that he's nursing through. And then they've got the whole bevy of options that will need to come back into that side. So I really have to lean heavily on the team-dependent line. And again, you really want to have your ear to the ground on timelines, better timelines for return on Soldo, and then also what we hear from GWS about who will return and where Darcy Jones might be. Because he's a kind of perfect option to be a sub as well because he's just so quick and we know that he can break a game already, as we saw on Thursday night. Yeah,
and that was the other point I was going to raise with Darcy Jones is that Sam Taylor should be back. Cornelio is a chance to be back as well. Brent Daniels is unused sub. He'll be back into the side. And then you've also there's one other player I'm missing that will come back in potentially. Oh, Toby Green will come back in.
Toby Green from suspension.
So that's 4 players. I actually looked at the team and even a Harvey Thomas could be potentially out this week, and he had a pretty solid game, but he could be gone just because the Giants are such a stacked list that there's just not enough spots. So as you said, I think Darcy Jones could be the sub, so that could be another thing. Whereas Sweet is, you know what role he's going to have, so if you can make it work, you could lean to Sweet there. Tim, got this one for you. We've got a couple more here. We have answered a lot of these questions with the general discussion, but just probably last couple. Johnny Test said this one. Does Marshall go? 2 poor scores in a row now, potential injury and rested time on ground. Could go down to a Sweet, then go Dempsey up to a Zach Merritt. And we had another question that was about very similar to that. So could that be an option to facilitate a rookie upgrade on the other end? I know you said you're potentially considering going a Grundy down, but what about a Marshall down?
Yeah, look, I think it's definitely an option. I think just hold fast. Let's wait until we hear the news. I mean, let's not forget that he did finish the game, right? So I know they didn't really have many other options, but it can't have been too bad. Like he's their prized possession, right? So if it was that bad, I think they would have just taken him off. But let's just hold fast. Let's wait until we see the news. But look, it definitely is an option this week.
Yeah. One thing to say, or 2 things to say. One, I think they can't afford to take him off in the first quarter because they've got no real genuine backup ruck options to play for a full game for a side that really needed 4 points. And then secondly, I think Tom Campbell had 50-odd hit-outs in the VFL on the weekend. And they've also got Jack Hayes, who they've played in the ruck as a ruck forward in the past before. So I think a trade of Marshall and Dempsey to Merritt and Sweet is a really great way to try and find a point of difference, particularly if you're not going to, go from Marshall up to Gawn and just match most of the top 10K.
Yeah. Chicken Boy 14 said, listen to you guys for a while on Spotify and the first time catching you live. Thanks, mate. Very much appreciated. Good to have you in here checking us out live here. I reckon we'll go one more and we will go for... okay, we'll go this one from Jack Wilson. Who goes first out of Cadman and Lazaro? Tim, who would you be trading first?
Oh, mate. Who are we talking?
Lazaro. What does Lazaro end up at?
425, break even to 53. Cadman, 425. And Lazaro. How did Lazaro play? I didn't get to see the game.
46. Didn't have any CBAs, so that role was gone as well. Just a forward.
And kicked a goal.
Yeah.
I'd
trade Lazaro, I think, first. I think Cadman. Cadman reminds me a bit of like even a Corey Durden from a couple of years ago. Just a guy that you don't have to trade because he's not. I don't think he's going to. I think he's got that backup ruck role. I don't think he's going to drop a 10.
Yeah, he does. He gets hit out.
Whatever. I think he'll get minimum. I think 32 is probably, or 33 is probably going to be about maybe around what his worst score been. His break-ins, I think, 50. So whereas Lazaro could be dropped. Then again, he could be a good loop, maybe. So, Liam?
Yeah, I think it's just Lazaro because of the potential that he'll be made sub again. I think we've already saw that he got made sub in that game against Hawthorn. I'd be a little bit worried, but I think that so Cadman's if I'm going to trade out a rookie this week and try and bank some cash with Jones, then it's going to be Cadman because he pretty much matched his break even from last week. And you guys mentioned the ruck roll was a little bit more shared last week.
Yeah,
a bit more from Riccardi up and down the ground, and it was they really did cap Cadman scoring. And I don't know if you guys saw, but Nick Madden, one of their backup rucks, has put together an all-time 2-week performance in the VFL. He had 160 odd, and I think he had like double-digit clearances. And Braden Pruce is injured again, and we know that Kieran Briggs is carrying a shoulder injury that he's not fully recovered from last year. So, yeah. It really is probably a flip of the coin. I think that if one of them, particularly if Lazaro's made sub, then you change him out. But otherwise, I think it's much of a muchness in a month by the time we reassess.
Yeah, Bruce is the only guy that can get injured on running out before they start the game. So Angus has got a question, but Angus, we can answer that on the Q&A potentially on a Tuesday when we do that because I like that question. But apologies we didn't get to your questions. But that will do us, Tim.
Well, Liam, before we go, mate, trade plans, any thoughts so far, or is it a bit early?
Yeah, look, as I'm sure you can imagine with the volume of issues that I have and injuries, I'm probably going to have to wait until the middle of the week to be really set in stone. But in all likelihood, I'm going to be, at the moment, I've got Cadman down to Jones, and then I'm taking Zach Williams, who I looped this week, up to one of those kind of under 800k forwards.
Yeah. All right. Bales, what about you, mate?
Mine are pretty locked in, so I'll be pretty short and sharp here. Dempsey down to Sweet, and Jeremy Sharp, unless Williams gets dropped, up to Nick Dacos.
All right, nice. Yeah, that'll be a nice trade.
And then you, mate?
Me, Zach Williams down to Jordan Sweet, which will allow me, because I had a bit of cash from last week, to take Jeremy Sharp up to Tom Green.
Yeah, love it.
Nice.
Awesome. All right. Well, Liam, mate, thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And, of course, all the work you do, mate. Let us know, firstly, where can the people find you, and if there's anything you want to share with our listeners.
Yeah, look, you can find me on Twitter at Liam AFLW Fantasy, and you can find my AFLW Fantasy Podcast Free Kick starting in June of this year for another season of AFLW Fantasy. We do, much like you guys, a review pod each week and then maybe a live space here or there. And we also do pre-season recaps of every team, and we hope to be a bit of a resource for people that quite often are playing for the first time. So, yeah, swing on by and give us a listen if you're looking for that.
Awesome. Thanks, mate. Bales, mate, anything you want to plug?
Just Tuesday, potentially we might have another Q&A again, about the same time, about 9 p.m. Eastern. So, yeah, just tune the socials and we'll let you guys know if we're doing one or not.
Excellent. Well, thanks to everyone for joining us, and a special thanks to those who joined us live, in particular those who sent us in questions. And, of course, you can send us questions into us on X, and please give us a follow at AFL Fantasy Fans. Of course, don't forget to tune in live each week after the final siren of the round on X and YouTube for our round review, along with Friday's pre-lockout chat, which is 4 p.m. Western and 6 p.m. Eastern on a Friday. And finally, you can listen to these spaces on the AFL Fantasy Fanatics podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, please give us a subscribe wherever you listen. And, of course, please give us a 5-star rating and review. Rate straight away. Best of luck with your research and with your carnage. And, of course, we'll catch you at the same time next week. Thanks a lot, and bye for now.
See ya.